New York Police Department data shows that in spite of stop and frisk, which is drastically skewed towards stopping and frisking minorities, whites who are stopped and frisked are much more likely to be carrying drugs and guns than minorities. Interesting data. This is publicly available. It's data on crime in 2012 from the New York Office of the Public Advocate. And it says white people were much more likely to be carrying guns and drugs than minorities, despite making up a tiny fraction of individuals police subjected to so-called stop and frisk. What do the numbers say? The likelihood of a stop, the likelihood that a stop of an African-American New Yorker yielded a weapon was half that of white New Yorkers that were stopped. NYPD uncovered a weapon in 1 out of every 49 stops of white New Yorkers, and it took 71 stops for every weapon finding for Latinos and 1 out of 93 African Americans. The likelihood a stop of an African American New Yorker yielded contraband was 1/3 less than that of white New Yorkers stopped. It was 1 out of 43 for white New Yorkers, and it was only 1 out of 57 for Latinos and 1 out of 61 for African Americans. Despite the reduction in total stops, the proportion involving Black or Latino New Yorkers has remained unchanged. 84% of stop and frisk is Blacks or Latinos, even though they are only 54% of the population. Now, the initial reaction from a lot of people to this was it's actually a smaller proportion of whites than Latinos or Blacks that carry guns or contraband in the entire city. That's not necessarily what this shows us. What this shows us is actually a second layer of implicit racism, which is that it's not that whites are more likely to be carrying drugs or guns. It means that the police are more discriminating in kind of a good way, right, about which white people they stop. They'll stop a Black person for being Black with less reasonable suspicion, which then means that's going to which is actually going to skew the numbers.
Yeah, so they're really good at spotting the shady white people.
Exactly. It's actually shown that they're really good. They're actually using some kind of an analysis to say, which white people do we want to stop? We're not going to stop white people just for being white. We're going to actually figure out who is doing something suspicious or acting suspiciously.
Are they going to stop that guy walking down the street in a $2,000 Italian suit?
Right. Well, I mean, we don't even want to go down that road.
But
opening up,
you know,
I see what you're
this
saying.
is the type of thing that's factored into their thought
what they're
process.
essentially doing is whiteness isn't a mark of anything. They're looking at other things that the person is doing or the clothes that they're wearing or other things about them that are suspicious.
Exactly.
Whereas being Black is itself the part that to them is suspicious.
That's exactly right. Now, even after all this data came out, Michael Bloomberg, the mayor of New York, is insisting that we need actually to be stopping less white people and more minorities. He said, I think we disproportionately stop whites too much and minorities too little. It's exactly the reverse of what they say, they talking about the critics. So Michael Bloomberg living in somewhat of an alternate reality, and the data is concerning. And really what we have here is we have a serious profiling situation, and it's showing us multiple levels of discrimination and prejudice, and it is disturbing.
But overall, is the stop and frisk taking guns off the street?
At the aggregate level, it is taking guns off of the streets. Yes, it is taking. In other words, more illegal guns are taken off the streets because stop and frisk exists than if it didn't. But that is not the barometer for determining whether this is being done properly in any way.
Right.
But you're making a point that yes, there are less guns on the streets because of stop and frisk.
Yeah.
Let's take a break. Next, Brian Fisher. What will Brian Fisher say about the Supreme Court decision on the Defense of Marriage Act, on Proposition 8, all that stuff, much more with him as well. I'll ask him, did he cry when he heard the decision? Stay with us.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.